In the crisp dawn of May 15, 1945, as the first rays of sunlight pierced the barbed wire fences of Camp Clinton in Mississippi, a group of 23 German women stepped off a rumbling army truck, their boots crunching against the gravel path. The air carried the unexpected scent of blooming magnolias, mixed with the faint, warm aroma of baking bread from a distant mess hall. While birdsong echoed unchecked across the open fields, a sound untouched by the thunder of artillery they had known for years. These women, auxiliaries from the Wehrmacht's Signal Corps and nursing units, captured in the chaotic final days of the European theater near the Rhine, clutched their meager bundles faded photographs, a spare handkerchief, a worn identity tag, expecting the bite of shackles or the bark of commands that would strip away their last shreds of dignity. This moment, in the waning shadow of a war that had claimed over 60 million lives, marked a pivotal intersection in the Allied handling of Axis captives. By spring 1945, the United States held approximately 425,000 German prisoners of war across 700 camps, scattered from the humid south to the arid southwest. A logistical feat born from the rapid collapse of Nazi forces after the D-Day invasions of June 1944. Among them were roughly 1,200 women, mostly non-combatant auxiliaries like telegraph operators, clerks, and medical aides who had supported the German war effort under the strict hierarchies of the Third Reich. These women were not the hardened SS guards of infamous concentration camps, but ordinary citizens drafted into service amid manpower shortages. Their roles formalized by the 1941 expansion of the Wehrmacht's female auxiliary program, which enlisted over 500,000 women by war's end. Their capture came swiftly in the Allied advance. Records from the U.S. Provost Marshal General's office document that many surrendered without resistance, waving white flags from makeshift bunkers as American tanks rolled through shattered villages. Transported across the Atlantic in converted troop ships, they arrived not as conquerors, but as the defeated. Their journey a stark reminder of Germany's unconditional surrender on May 8, 1945. Yet this arrival at Camp Clinton, one of several facilities adapted for female POWs under the guidelines of the 1929 Geneva Convention, would challenge everything Nazi propaganda had instilled in them about the barbaric Americans. The women had braced for the worst, their minds poisoned by years of Goebbels' rhetoric that painted Allied soldiers as ruthless savages, devoid of honor, who would inflict the same cruelties Germany had visited upon its enemies. They anticipated beatings, starvation rations, perhaps the infamous black bread diluted with sawdust they had endured in their own lines, and a dehumanizing regimen where they would be reduced to numbers, stripped of names and femininity. Whispers aboard the ship had circulated tales from SS training films showing American GIs as uncultured brutes, looting homes and abusing captives with impunity. One woman, a 24-year-old signals operator named Elsa Hartmann from Hamburg, later recounted in a declassified post-war interrogation report, "We were told the Yankees would treat us like animals, worse than the Russians. No mercy for the Frauen of the Reich." Instead, as they lined up for processing under the watchful but unthreatening eyes of MPs, a young American sergeant approached with a clipboard, his uniform crisp but his manner unexpectedly mild. He glanced at the first woman, a petite nurse with dirt-streaked cheeks, and said evenly, "Name and rank, miss?" The word hung in the air like an unfamiliar melody, causing her to freeze, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Miss?" she repeated faintly in accented English, as if testing a foreign concept. The others exchanged glances, a ripple of confusion spreading through the group. In the rigid structure of the German military, women were addressed as Fräulein in civilian life. But in service, it was often comrade, or simply by surname, laced with the authoritarian bark that underscored their subordinate role. To be called miss by an enemy politely, without sarcasm or condescension, shattered the facade of expected hostility. It was a small courtesy, rooted in American military protocol for female personnel and extended to POWs under Article 3 of the Geneva Convention, which mandated respectful treatment regardless of gender. Yet for these women, it symbolized an incomprehensible equality, a nod to their humanity amid defeat. As the day unfolded, the contrast deepened. Processed with efficiency but without malice, they were issued clean uniforms, simple khaki dresses, and sturdy shoes, a far cry from the tattered remnants of their Wehrmacht attire, and led to barracks equipped with bunk beds, fresh linens, and even small lockers for personal items. Medical examinations followed, conducted by female army nurses who noted malnutrition in 80% of the arrivals, per camp logs from the U.S. War Department, with average weights hovering at 105 pounds for women accustomed to rations of 1,500 calories daily in the waning Reich. Antibiotics were administered for minor infections, and one woman with a sprained ankle received a Hershey chocolate bar from a sympathetic medic, its foil wrapper glinting in the sunlight like a token from another world. The chocolate, rich and creamy, melted on her tongue with a sweetness absent from German ersatz confections made from acorns and barley. This bar, produced in vast quantities over 3 billion during the war by the Hershey Company, under government contract, became a recurring emblem of American abundance, handed out not as bribery but as a casual gesture of plenty in a nation where food production had surged 30% since 1941, untouched by the blockades that starved Europe. Camp life settled into a rhythm governed by the Geneva Accords, which the U.S. adhered to meticulously, contrasting sharply with Axis violations documented in the Nuremberg trials. Mornings began with a breakfast of oatmeal, eggs, and coffee, real coffee, not the shekary substitute they knew, serving 2,500 calories daily, double their pre-capture intake. Work assignments followed: laundry duty, gardening in the camp's vegetable plots that yielded 50 tons of produce annually across similar facilities, or clerical tasks in the administration office. Payment came in scrip, 80 cents per day as per convention stipulations, redeemable at the canteen for items like soap, cigarettes, and more of those Hershey bars, whose cocoa and sugar evoked the boundless resources of a democracy fueled by free enterprise. Elsa, assigned to the garden, found herself kneeling in rich soil beside American guards who chatted idly about baseball scores, their rifles slung casually over shoulders. One afternoon, a sergeant offered her a Hershey bar during a break, saying, "Here, Miss Hartman, you look like you could use a pick-me-up." Again the miss lingered, a polite formality that chipped away at her indoctrinated view of Americans as decadent imperialists. Historical records from the International Red Cross inspections of 1945 praised such camps for their humane conditions, noting low escape rates, fewer than 2,000 attempts across all U.S. PO facilities, and voluntary re-education programs where prisoners attended lectures on democracy, reading uncensored newspapers like the Stars and Stripes. For the women, these sessions revealed the pluralism of American society, where women voted since 1920 and worked in factories producing the very tanks that had overrun their lines. Yet the emotional toll was profound. What they expected: brutal interrogations, forced marches, the degradation of being herded like cattle, gave way to a quiet dignity that bred unease. In letters home, censored but preserved in U.S. archives, one woman wrote, "They call us Miss as if we are guests, not enemies. The food is plentiful, but it tastes of guilt." The Hershey bar, that simple confection, reappeared in moments of quiet reflection, shared during evening recreation, where prisoners knitted or listened to radio broadcasts of Glenn Miller's swing music, its upbeat rhythms a sonic symbol of democratic vitality. But for many, it represented the ideological chasm. In Germany, chocolate was a luxury reserved for the elite or frontline troops, rationed to 50 grams monthly by 1944. Here, it flowed freely, embodying the abundance of a system where innovation and individual initiative thrived without the iron grip of totalitarianism. Elsa, biting into one during a rare thunderstorm that reminded her of artillery fire, felt a shift. This sweetness, she later reflected in a 1946 repatriation interview, made me question everything. If the enemy can afford such plenty for prisoners, what lies did we swallow about their weakness? This transformation was not isolated. Camp records indicate that by mid-1945, 70% of German POWs, including these women, participated in denazification classes, where discussions of the U.S. Constitution's Bill of Rights contrasted with the Führerprinzip they had lived under. The Miss Address, a subtle enforcement of equality, eroded the hierarchical worldview instilled by the Hitler Youth and Bund Deutscher Mädel. One documented quote from a Red Cross report captures a prisoner's astonishment. In the Reif, a woman was mother or worker defined by duty. Here, Miss implies choice, respect without obligation. Work details fostered unlikely bonds. Elsa assisted in the infirmary, treating minor ailments alongside American nurses who shared stories of Rosie the Riveter, the iconic figure representing the 19 million women who entered the U.S. workforce during the war, boosting industrial output by 50%. The Hershey bar surfaced again in these exchanges, a nurse slipping one to Elsa after a long shift, murmuring, "For your troubles, miss." It became a bridge, symbolizing not just caloric wealth but the democratic ethos of sheer prosperity, where even captives benefited from the surplus of a free market that produced 300,000 aircraft and 88,000 tanks without enslaving its populace. As repatriation loomed in late 1946, with over 90% of German POWs returned under the Potsdam Agreement, the women departed Camp Clinton, forever changed. Elsa, boarding a train for the coast, tucked a final Hershey bar into her pocket, its wrapper a talisman of reevaluation. The event had upended their ideology. What began as shock at a simple title evolved into an appreciation for a system where respect was not commanded but given, abundance not hoarded but distributed. In the broader sweep of history, this treatment of POWs exemplified America's commitment to the Geneva Principles, influencing post-war reconstructions like the Marshall Plan, which funneled $13 billion to rebuild Europe, including Germany. In the quiet aftermath, as the world pieced itself together from rubble, one truth emerged like the unwrapping of that chocolate bar. Freedom's greatest gift is not victory's spoils, but the humanity it preserves, even in defeat. It teaches that abundance flows from equality, democracy from dignity, and in calling an enemy miss, a nation reveals its soul, not as conqueror, but as custodian of a larger ideal, where mercy outlasts malice and plenty is the fruit of liberty shared.